Bum 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 dun 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 bum bum bum. Hey guys, how you doing? First thing you'll notice, check me out. Check me out. Here, I'll do the full display. I'll do the full display. Look at me. Look at me. I look like I'm a civilized person. Look at it. Bear witness to the perfection of the trimmed beard. Trimmed beard. I am a civilized adult. Look at me. Uh, I went to the gym yesterday, and I was starting to feel it last night, like while I was streaming. But boy, am I ever! I hadn't been to the gym in uh, uh, like over a month because I went back home to Manitoba. I was like on vacation. Like the whole thing blew up. I was in this like good process of getting to the gym, and then it all blew up. So I got back and I decided I was just gonna go for it, and I went for it. And today I am like moving my arms. It's just like yeah. I would like to start the stream, of course, today by thanking my Patreons. It's this is going to become the new thing that I do, and I've got to uh, uh, um, uh, yeah. I'm just going to start by saying thank you to everybody who's donating. Thank you to everybody who's taking a little bit of the money that you're making and sending it my way. Even a dollar helps. Please consider donating to the Patreon, but to the people out there in the world who are donating to this stream to make this keep happening, to keep supporting this, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I appreciate it more than anything else. Not just from the straight raw financials, but like from the support aspect to it. Like very recently, I took a little, I withdrew a little bit from the Patreon, and it was exactly at the right time. And when I did it, I felt uplifted. I felt like people were really supporting me and really out in the world, believing in what it is that I'm here to do. I'm going to be leaning pretty heavily on the resources that came out of the Discord today, because today was an errand day, as you can see, right? This is an errand I had to go about. But I think that there's a huge piece of news that just came out that has shifted things pretty dramatically. Eggs D, as always, good to see you, my man. Good to see you, my man. You're like probably my most loyal viewer, my man. I'm so glad that you're out there in the world fighting the good fight. The piece of news that I am talking about, of course, Israel-Gaza war. U.S. pushes for immediate ceasefire at UN Security Council after vetoing previous resolutions. This is a major development in the Palestinian genocide. This comes from the South China Morning Post. So, of course, they're being very diplomatic. They're calling it the Israel-Gaza war, as if that is a war. It is not a joke, in fact, Long Defiant. You can find many sources for this. I think that what has happened is that the United States has now gotten everything they want out of the genocide. That what they wanted was they wanted to clear the area so that they could put a pier there, right? And of course they're putting a pier there being like, we need to send in humanitarian aid. That's what we need to do. We need to set up a pier for humanitarian aid. And a bunch of gullible, like, Destiny heads, like Stephen Bonnell's fans or Ian Kaczynski's fans will all just be like, oh yeah, it's for aid. Well, yeah, why would the United States cause genocide when they're setting up piers to help people? Huh? What about that? Because they're very stupid people. And but what's clearly happening is that they're setting up a pier so that they can begin funneling resources into that region to begin exploiting the natural gas and oil that exists in the area. I should have an article for this because I think that this is what this is all about. Gaza natural gas. Very recently, they found Yeah, 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 oh, come on. No, no. I want one of the older articles from before the genocide. Maybe natural gas discovered. Here's a good discovered because 2000 reserves of natural gas were found offshore on the Gaza Strip in the year 2000 within the framework of the licensing to British gas by the Palestinian National Authority, right? So, uh, uh, yeah, they found something like, what was it, 5,000 or 500 tons, some ridiculous number. Yeah, here it is. A recent study by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development points out that new discoveries of natural gas in the Levant Basin are in the range of 122 trillion cubic feet, while recoverable oil is estimated at 1.7 billion barrels. These reserves offer an opportunity to distribute and share, ha ha ha, distribute and share, that's hilarious, about $524 billion among the different parties in the region. So that's what this is all about. And of course, the United States wants to cut the Palestinians out of this. They're not interested in sharing the gas and oil benefits with the Palestinians. Like they're not part of the deal, right? In the same way that the First Nations people during the genocide in North America were cut out of the deal, right? So now that they've got this pier set up, and now that they have ethnically cleansed the region, they're going to begin setting up infrastructure in order to exploit the natural resources in the region, begin the process of extraction, and funnel that gas. Where do you think that gas is going to go? Is there a United States partner that very recently is experiencing natural gas shortages? Is there a place that we know of that very recently, perhaps because of the United States actions, is experiencing a decline in or a crisis, a natural gas crisis? Oh, it's Germany, right? It's Europe. That when the Americans blew up the Nord Stream pipeline from Russia to Europe, it cut Europe off from natural gas, and it forced Europe to go to other places to buy natural gas. And that natural gas, of course, is being sold to Europe at a huge premium price. So Europeans are spending way more for natural gas than they were previously. The United States said, we'll be able to replace that natural gas. It hasn't been able to do that, right? But once again, the United States is just full of shit. And so they saw October 7th as an opportunity, right? Crisis capitalists saw the October 7th event as an opportunity to cleanse the area, get rid of these Palestinians, and begin extracting natural gas so that they can sell it to Europe. Right? That's what this is all about. And I think it's sort of odd that I don't see that article. Like I've never seen that article in the national in the New York Times, the Washington Post, right? I don't see news outlets talking about this very like clear cut. Like, and let me be very clear about everything I just said there. I don't have a source, right? I'm not sitting here with like a piece of paper being like, look at this thing that I investigated and found. It's just, these are the facts on the ground. And like if I saw a 1 over here and I saw a 1 over here, I could go, well, 1 plus 1 equals 2, right? So it's just clear. It's just obvious what's happening. That the United States is cleansing Gaza in order to extract gas to sell it to Europe, who is currently in a natural gas crisis because the United States blew up the Nord Stream pipeline that was running from Russia to Europe. So the entire goal of America during these last 10 years and during the Biden administration is 100% to make Europe completely dependent on America. That's the goal. And more or less, that's what I think all of these recent wars, it's what the Ukraine war was actually all about. It's to increase dependency and to drive a wedge between Russia and Europe to ensure that Russia and Europe could never actually complete the connection, right? The plan that Khrushchev and Brezhnev and Gorbachev and Yeltsin all and Putin all had was to make that connection happen, was to make Europe and Russia all part of the same alliance and the same unit and the same trade organization. And the United States didn't want that. They wanted that to blow up. And so they've blown it up, and they blew it up through the Ukraine war. And now they're going to increase the dependency of Europe on the United States but through this ethnic cleansing and through the exploitation. Resist, good to see you. June, good to see you. Eric, good to see you. Yeah, imagine if they called the Holocaust the German-Jewish conflict. Yes, exactly. Well, I mean, that's kind of what they did do during that period of time, right? Like, it's only afterwards. The phrase is hindsight is 2020. So like, what's going to be wild? It's going to be wild to see, like, the Stephen Bunnells in the conversation try to pivot. Because they're going to. Scrail, good to see you. It's been a while since I've seen you in the chat. Good to see you. I hope things are going well for you. Gabriel, good to see you too. So, now that all of that has happened, right? Now that they're exploiting the gas and the Gazans have been ethnically cleansed and they've been pushed out, now the United States is going to call for a ceasefire and is going to put a ceasefire resolution. And of course, Washington has previously used its UNSC veto to block the world body for calling for a truce of the Palestinian territory, which they've done on 4 separate occasions, right? Very famously. The UN has circulated a draft resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire linked to the release of hostages in the Gaza Strip. In fact, we've actually have a resolution that we put forward right now. It's before the United Nations that does call for an immediate ceasefire tied to the release of hostages. And we hope very much that countries will support that. Literally every country except yours has been voting in favor of a ceasefire. I think it would send a strong message, a strong signal, he told the Saudi media outlet Al Hadath. Blinken said Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan and then held talks with the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman soon after landing in the kingdom. The United States, Israel's main backer, has previously used its UN Security Council veto to block the world body. Like, so the answer, so it's why now? Why are they doing it now? And the answer is because they've gotten everything they want, right? The Gazans have been completely destroyed. They are not in a position to be able to fight back. The United States has nothing left to gain from continuing the genocide actively. Israel wants to, of course, complete, in a final solution sort of way, because they're essentially Nazis, Zionists. So they would like to complete it, and they probably will continue erecting policies of ethnic cleansing and policies of displacement. Right? They'll probably continue solidifying those sorts of Nazi systems. And of course, the question will then be, let's say a ceasefire is called, well, what will the political fallout be for Netanyahu and for the Zionists that are in office? Chances are very good that Netanyahu will just fade out, and they'll just replace him with another Zionist, right? There'll just be another Zionist that takes his place, and everybody will pretend as though this Zionist is different than the previous Zionists. Just like how NATO, rehabilitated the Nazis after World War II, and everybody just forgot that these Nazis existed in the first place. And so that's the big story for the day. That's the big thing that's happening. Yeah. Yeah, and there's this aspect too, of course, long defined. The U.S. peer equals exit for Gazans. At least that's what the Zios think. I mean, it will be used for that, I'm sure. There will be a certain amount of Gazans that take the boat and flee, right? Of course. But I think that's just a side effect. I don't think the United States gives two shits about what happens to these Gazans. That they would just roll them over with bulldozers if they could, right? So a boat will come in with equipment to set up the oil drilling and the oil extraction, right? To bring people in order to facilitate the extraction of the natural gas, and the boat will leave, and they'll like, oh yeah, okay, we might as well just fill it with Gazans. Sure, right? And who cares where you go, right? You're gonna go to Europe, okay. You're gonna come to the United States, okay. We don't care, right? You're just another group of refugees. We don't care about your background. We don't care. Learn English, like get a job. That's what they'll be told, right? Very very simply. And no one's gonna give two shits about the genocide they just experienced. Like it's just gonna be forgotten, right? It's just gonna be completely forgotten, and nobody's gonna care at all, outside of like small pockets of Muslim groups in Western countries. Israel won't let concrete into Gaza, much less oil equipment. Oh, I disagree with that. I think that if you say to Israel, hey, we can give you $200 billion, right? And all we got to do is drill some oil. Like, I mean, the Zionists only have principles until it meets money, right? Like they don't actually have real principles. Right? They don't actually care. That article, Matthias, good to see you. It's been floating around for so long that and it's just so fucking gauche that I've never reported on it, but now seems to be the right time. Where did I see this? Yeah, there it is. So like, I've seen a few videos and I've seen people talking about it, but it's so grotesque, right? It's just so grotesque. Jared Kushner says Gaza's waterfront property could be very valuable. Donald Trump's son-in-law also says Israel should bulldoze an area of the Negev desert and move Palestinians there. Jared Kushner has praised the very valuable potential of Gaza's waterfront property and suggested Israel should remove citizens while it cleans up the strip. You know, we gotta cleanse it, right? It's dirty right now. The former property dealer married to Donald Trump's daughter Ivanka made the comments in an interview at Harvard University on the 15th of February. The interview was posted on the YouTube channel of the Middle East Initiative, a program of Harvard Kennedy's School of Government, earlier this month. Kushner was a senior foreign policy advisor under Trump's presidency and was tasked with preparing a peace plan for the Middle East. Like, life is a parody of itself now. Right? Sorry, a guy on Twitch actually just said something very funny. His name is Hi, I Like Booba. Relatable name. Who's this guy? Some kind of Vosh from Wish? No, I would argue that Ian, what's his name? Kaczewski? Ian is the Vosh from Wish. If you'd like political analysis from somebody who uses evidence and isn't a pedophile, hello. Yeah, that I would say that's mainly what distinguishes me from Ian is that I'm not a pedophile and I like evidence and I use evidence in my analysis. Oh yeah, and I'm not being paid by the Democratic Party. So there's that too. Critics of the plan. Sorry. It's just like life is a parody of itself now. Kushner was senior foreign policy advisor under Trump's presidency and was tasked with preparing a peace plan for the Middle East. Critics of the plan, which is like literally like anybody. If you're working at a Wendy's, you could be like, that seems wrong. Seems wrong that Jared Kushner would be the guy who would prepare a peace plan for the Middle East. Critics of the plan, which involved Israel striking normalization deals with Gulf states, said it bypassed questions about the future of Palestinians. No shit. You mean the guy who's talking about how waterfront property is very valuable doesn't care about the Palestinians? No way. No way. Oh, dude, I started trashing Vosh, and now the Twitch chat is lit up. I don't know what it is about these guys. Like, I don't know what it is. Why do people care about these guys? They're such obvious losers. Like, they're dumb. They're not literate. They don't know anything. And like, openly. Like, they openly celebrate how stupid they are. And anytime they talk to anybody, like Stephen Bonnell very recently, Destiny, right? He just got totally bodied by Norm Finkelstein. Like, completely bodied. And all his fans are losing their minds about it instead of going like, oh wait, this guy's stupid. Like, why are we listening to this idiot? Like, it should be a real Emperor has no clothes moment where everybody goes like, wow, you're actually really fucking stupid. Like, what? But I think there's a lot of genocidal maniacs in the conversation, and these are the people who they found, right? Like, you go into your average Call of Duty chat or your Call of Duty game lobby, right? Those are the people who listen to Stephen Bunnell, right? The kind of people who are just like misogynist racists and xenophobes mainly. So why are we surprised? His remarks, Jared Kushner's remarks at Harvard, gave a hint at the kind of Middle East policy that could be pursued in the event that Trump returns to the White House, including a search for a normalization deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Good luck with that now, bud. Good luck with that now. The people of Saudi Arabia are not going to go along with that. If the Saudi princes were to stand in front of their Arab population and say, hey, the Zionist group that just committed a genocide against an Arab population, we're going to start trading with them. Yeah, they'd have a rebellion on their hands. Like, it's a significant event. And Jared Kushner is just like, doop, doop, doop. Wow, waterfront property. Gaza's waterfront property could be very valuable if people would focus on building up livelihoods, Kushner told his interviewer, the faculty chair of the Middle East Initiative, Professor Tarek Massoud. Kushner also lamented all the money that had gone to the territory's tunnel network and munitions instead of education and innovation. I mean, I'm with you there, Jared. I also, and I bet you the Palestinians also somewhat lament that. I bet that they're sitting there being like, man, it's such a shame that we were forced to build this tunnel network in defense of our people and our own livelihood instead of education and innovation. It's almost like there is an invasive force that your own country, Jared, you were the foreign policy advisor for the United States government under your father-in-law, Donald Trump. I feel like you should know this, but you don't. But you don't. Resist, I know you're joking, dude. Vosh is the leading light of online political discourse and should be on Mount Rushmore with Destiny, Bernie Sanders, and AOC. Yeah. Neartech, we got a new person in the YouTube. Neartech, hi, hello. As strong a comment as I've ever seen. Strong a comment as I've ever seen. This Jared Kushner shit, dude. Like, look how pathetic the West has become. Like, really look at how pathetic this is. This guy, Jared Kushner, right? Little baby face. Jared Kushner looks like a doll come to life. Right? Looks like a ventriloquist dummy became alive. Right? He's gotten a little older, you can see. That's fine. We all get a little older. Like, when Donald Trump, first of all, Donald Trump was the president. Remember that? When Donald Trump was the president? He was the senior foreign policy advisor to his father-in-law, Donald Trump. And he's utterly clueless, like an utter clueless dimwit about what's going on in the region. His concerns are about waterfront property. He does not give two shits at all about the genocide that the Americans are facilitating. Like, it's a parody of itself. Hard to imagine why the entire rest of the world is looking at America going, I don't think so at this place. I don't. Kushner also said he thinks Israel should move civilians from Gaza to the Negev desert in southern Israel. So just genocidal. Just straight up, like, displacement, right? He said that if he were in charge of Israel, his number one priority would be getting civilians out of the southern city of Rafah, and that with diplomacy, it could be possible to get them into Egypt. But in addition to that, I would just bulldoze something in Negev. I would try to move people in there, he said. I think that's a better option. So you can go in and finish the job. Like, Jesus. It's just straight up mask off Nazism at this point. He reiterated the point a little later, saying, I do think right now, opening up the Negev, creating a secure area there, moving the civilians out, and then going in and finishing the job would be the right move. I love that he's saying finishing the job. We need some kind of solution to this problem, guys. Some kind of, solution that's extremely final, some kind of final solution. The suggestion drew a startled response from Massoud. Is that something that they're talking about in Israel? Massoud asked. I mean, that's the first I've really heard of somebody, aside from President Sisi, Egypt's leader, suggesting that Gazans trying to flee the fighting could take refuge in Negev. Are people in Israel seriously talking about that possibility? I don't know. Kushner replied, shrugging his shoulders. He's just spitballing. He's just spitballing some genocidal ideas. That would be something you'd try to work on? Massoud asked. I'm sitting in Miami Beach right now, Kushner said, and I'm looking at the situation and I'm thinking, what would I do if I was there? Bro, just get an SS uniform on this guy, man. Just get an SS uniform on that guy, right? Asked by Massoud about fears on the part of Arabs in the region that Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu would not allow Palestinians who flee Gaza to return, Kushner paused and then said, maybe. He went on to say, I'm not sure there's much left of Gaza at this point. If you think about even the construct, Gaza was not really a historical precedent. It was the result of a war, and you had tribes in different places, and then Gaza became a thing. Egypt used to run it, and then over time, different governments came in. Dude, this is the best they've got. Like, this is the best the United States has. This is their best and their brightest, right? These are the voices that they have. Like, this is becoming the new theme of this channel, is recognizing and realizing that the best the West have are illiterate, moronic, genocidal dimwits. It's the best we've got, and we can't do better. And the entire rest of the world is just watching us going like, what? Listen to this. This is how they close this article. Responding to a question about whether the Palestinians should have their own state, Kushner described the proposal as a super bad idea that would essentially be rewarding an act of terror. These people are Nazis, right? Right? Like, anybody gonna stand up in front of me and say that these guys are not genocidal Nazis? Because, like, they're really obviously genocidal Nazis. Everything they say is, we should commit a genocide. You know, guys, I have a final solution to this problem. What we should do is ethnically cleanse the region through a genocide. That's what we should do. Absolutely. That's going to be for the best for everybody. Right? And somebody stands up and says, but what about the Palestinians? And they just go, they're terrorists. Like, they're just, like, literally one step away from being like, it's totally fine to just kill Arabs. Who cares? They're just Arabs. Like, this is where we're at. These are who these people are. Oh, man. I knew there was a reason I was avoiding this article. Because I knew it was just going to be so clownish. Like, it's just total fucking clown shoes at this point. Right? They don't care. They're maniacs. Right? They're obviously psychopaths. And these are the people who are, like, Jared Kushner is going to he's going to be part of the next administration. They're going to take power again. Donald Trump and all these people are going to take power again. Right? And what do you think's going to happen? How do you think it's going to go? Right? And in the meantime, we've got a housing crisis going on. We've got an inflation crisis going on. We've got a homelessness crisis going on. Our infrastructure is in free fall collapse. Everybody's quality of life is in major decline. and everybody is really noticing it, right? Young people's happiness is falling sharply for Canada and the US in global rankings, right? We are precipitously going in a downward drop, and we're voting Nazis. We're going to put Donald Trump in power, and here in Canada, we're going to put Pierre Poilievre in power. And Pierre Poilievre is just basically going to continue the decline as sharply as possible, because it's a policy of extraction and abandonment. That's the goal at this point, is to extract as much wealth from the society as they can get away with, and then just back off and watch it collapse. While they go off to Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island or Mark Zuckerberg's underground bunker, which will probably also be a pedophile bunker, right? Like, and just fucking... And that's the strategy. That's the goal. That's what they're doing. Ooh. But like Vosh, you are a streamer who's learning about other countries for the first time by reading Wikipedia. Look, Wikipedia is fine for like basic history. Like if you want to know some like basic history, but if you're going to get into like actual analysis, don't use Wikipedia, right? The number one reason why you should not use Wikipedia for serious critical analysis is because the founder of Wikipedia literally said, and has said several times, that it's become a CIA platform. It's become a CIA asset. That the CIA is all in this thing. And every single time you go on any political article on Wikipedia now, you get down into the sources, right? And you start clicking around on sources, you find Radio Free Asia, you find just like CIA-backed publications. Oftentimes you'll just get caught in the loop that the CIA does, where it'll get a news organizations like the New York Times to make a claim, and then they'll have the New York Times post articles using the article that the New York Times itself made as a claim as the source, right? So they'll just have this loop where we claim that this happened. We have no evidence, but we made the claim in the New York Times. And then we have other New York Times articles that use that article as a source for the claim that we made in the first place. So it's just like this loop of information that originates with the CIA. And it's just like, content, good to see you. But if you want to learn about, like, in 1853, in the island nation of Buenos Aires, right? Yeah, great. Like, I think there's nothing wrong with that kind of thing. But it's when you get into the political part of it. And basically anything post, like, 1990 is way too, but like the 1900s, once you start getting into the 1900s, you should be really, really skeptical of what you read on Wikipedia. Like everything should be, and if people are using Wikipedia as like a checkmate, here's my source, Wikipedia, then you know immediately that they're just a loser, right? That they're just a stooge, that this plays, right? Read a book. Like read something that's actually been vetted by scholars, right? No. If your source comes down to the Central Intelligence Agency, which is fucking Wikipedia now, get the fuck out of here, right? But if you want to learn about like how does candy get made, great. Yeah, Wikipedia is the McDonald's junk food of information. It's a fine place to like. You know what? Like yesterday, I literally was like, oh, what is the history of Ghana? Where can I go to read about the history of Ghana very quickly? And because I've been doing that for so long, right? For so long, when I read these articles, I can see the CIA propaganda. You can always kind of tell because the CIA has gotten to the point now where they're like, their news strategy is whenever they put something in a Wikipedia article, they'll have like 28 sources. So they'll be something and they'll be like 338 sources because their strategy now is just total scattershot. So that normies will look at it and go, oh wow, there's 385 sources. That's verified. And then you start going through the sources and they literally source each other. And they're like sourcing each other in the article and going back and forth and sourcing one another. And then when you get down to the base of all of these 358 articles and it all like funnels down like this, it goes sourced by literally the CIA. So that's their new strategy, right? Yeah, it's a darkly evil organization, and I think what's so wild is that even in the modern era, people seem to think it doesn't matter, that it doesn't actually exist, right? Or that it does exist, but certainly it's not doing the things that you claim that it does, even though they've stated that that's their objective, right? Yeah, Eric's writing here about the Stephen interview. The At one point, Norman bodied Stephen so hard when he was saying, between the three of us, we've read over 10K books while you're reading Wikipedia articles. Yeah, at one point, as Norman berates Stephen, his partner was laughing. You know it's bad when your own partner is laughing at you. I mean, it's just... And Norman Finkelstein's hilarious, man. He's just, like, totally... Hassan had the best analysis of that situation where he said the reason Stephen was there was for... I think that's comedy relief. Yeah. Also, did you ever watch that new Atlas video to get CIA document? I haven't. Sorry, but I don't even remember this conversation. Sorry. Did you hear the Trump call where he says Biden was too soft on the Gaza issue? Yeah. I don't know how they could have gone harder. Old Star, good to see you. How does Wee Whiz get made? What? What are you talking about, bro? Methane writes, gotta remember, all your beloved facts came directly from capitalists 97.8% of the time. Yeah, and it's just like, it's so odd to watch a society, like, the same organizations and the same people are lying to you over and 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 over again. And it gets completely verified. And not only does it become verified, it becomes public knowledge. It becomes common knowledge. Like the number one thing that everybody knows. And if anybody stood up and tried to deny it, we would all say, that discredits you as a thinker. We no longer need to listen to you as a thinker. Is that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Right? It was a lie. They lied about it. We've got people who literally were investigating the weapons of mass destruction claim. We know that the CIA lied about the weapons of mass destruction claim. We know it was a false pretense in order to start a war there. It was a lie that completely originated by the CIA to the point where they've now confessed to it. It's extremely common knowledge and everybody knows it. The State Department lied, the government lied, the CIA lied, and then the moment they turn around and start talking about any other subject, everybody goes, but they're 100% telling the truth about that 100%. That's 100% the truth, 100%, 100%, 100%. And you've got to like go through this like painstaking, tooth-pulling journey of once again showing that the people who just lied to you, like literally just lied to you, are also capable of lying about other things. And it's and I think the thing that is so shocking to watch is how people have zero skepticism. The just overwhelming gullibility of the populace, who are just literally willing to be like, oh, they lied about it. Well, I mean, you know, well, now they're telling the truth about that. Oh my God, Ukraine war. Russia's a Nazi organization. The Nazis and the Soviets were allies, actually, you know. I heard about that on the Wikipedias. Like, we're a very dim-witted people. Like, I think that's the big lesson that I've had over the last, like, 3 years as I've been doing this, is the understanding that, like, Westerners are extremely gullible. Like, just extremely gullible. Like, they're reading they're like literally sourcing children's books about animals. Like, straight up Animal Farm is a children's book. And everybody's like, that's how the Soviet Union was. I read about it in school. That was set up by capitalists. And here we are. Like, just no critical thinking skills whatsoever. Nobody being like, maybe the lying liars who have done nothing but lie are lying. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Old Star, I'm so tired. Oh, hold on. Before I get to that, Transylvanian, good to see you, Transylvanian. 90% of those sources turned out to be circular reporting. Back to Radio Free Asia, Adrian Zenz, Cold War Russophobe. Yeah, that's their whole strategy. And like the founder of Wikipedia has said so. Right? Anytime anybody's any investigations on this, it's like very clear. There isn't a single scholar that'll tell you to use Wikipedia as a source, right? Like the scholar position is like, yeah, it's fine if you want like just like a loose kind of generalized understanding, but if that's the basis of where like for God's sakes, like people are just getting their information from comic books now. Like that's where we're at, right? People are basing their political thinking on comic books. That is 100% what is happening. And that's essentially what I say to people now. I get into these conversations and I'm like, bro, you just got to stop getting your politics from comic books. Like, really. Like, if you want to have these grown-up conversations, if you want to get involved in foreign policy analysis, if you want to get involved in domestic policy analysis, if you want to get involved in political analysis of what's going on in your country, you got to stop reading comic books, right? Like, you can read your comic books, but, like, you also got to read books. You also got to, like, know something about the subject. And you got to know who's making claims, right? And you got to know what evidence is, and you got to know what sources are, and you got to know why people are saying the things that they are saying, right? But if all you do is get your politics from comic books, which is what is happening, like these Marvel movies and all this Marvel garbage, right? Then this is what you end up with. You just end up with a populace of dimwits who are just going around committing genocide while a guy named fucking Destiny defends it. Like, we're children. We're getting exactly what we deserve. And we are going to get exactly what we deserve. The rest of the world population is going to abandon us. And when they do, it's going to be for the best. It's going to be the best for everybody. Yeah, Old Star writes, so I'm so tired of arguing with capitalists that whatever they argue with me at the bar or at work, I just tell them I supported Saddam Hussein. I don't. But I have read how to defend that guy as a bit. Yeah, like Saddam Hussein is so hilarious. Like he always was a CIA asset, right? Like he was a CIA asset that the CIA wanted to clear out. That's what he always was. And like apparently his big sin for why they wanted to clear him out is that he actually started to govern. That was a problem. They didn't want him to actually start governing. Long Defiant. Destiny was there because his wife left him and he's gone 100% into Zionism to cope. First of all, his wife left him? Yeah, good. Good for her. She bailed ship, right? Like, no, I think Destiny is just a total sellout. Like, I think Stephen Bonnell is just sold out. That he saw the pile of money. He saw the pedophile caverns. Right, he saw all of the stuff, and he was like, "Oh, that my life could be Bugattis and prostitutes and having sex with little girls. That's what my life can be." Okay, what do you need me to say? Oh, this genocide is good. Okay, Zionism is great. Okay, perfect. Does that mean I get to have sex with little girls? Cool. Like, I think that's what's happened. And his wife left him because he has no principles, right? And he's probably having sex with 10-year-olds. Like, that's what's happening in the world today. Right? I don't even think that that's like an accusation anymore. Eric writes, it was how that Russian Nazi dude that Putin killed, Navalny, had some connections through the CIA. You said you were going to watch the video to get to the document. Oh, yeah, okay. I just don't care about Navalny, dude. Like, it's just so clear. Like, the guy's obviously a Nazi. And Navalny is it's just low priority for me. I bought a Saddam Hussein wristwatch to support my bit. That's so funny, dude. Like, that's so stupid, but it's so funny at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, the world is a parody of itself. Like, the West is a parody of itself. It's and it's not going to recover. So you might as well be doing that shit. Yeah, it's like they've hypnotized people to just believe the CIA info no matter what. Oh yeah, that really flows into the one conspiracy theory that I actually believe. The one conspiracy theory that I will actually buy into without evidence at all. And if the evidence were to surface, I would 100% be like, called it. that they are 100% hypnotizing us through these phones. 100%, right? All of these Marvel movies and all this garbage and all this trash that they're having us watch, I bet you that they are like implanting subliminal messages under there to create trigger words in people, to create fear responses to certain ideas, right? And I think there's enough credible evidence on the what's that called? Circumstantial evidence, like it's exactly in the wheelhouse of the CIA. Like we all know about MK Ultra, right? MK Ultra was a mind control program where they were trying to mind control people with drugs, right? So it's right in the wheelhouse of the CIA. It's something they've always been trying to do. And you can also find videos on YouTube. I was about to say I could show them to you, but I can't because my channel will get shut down if I do that for copyright. But you can go on YouTube and you can see people getting hypnotized through screens. There's a very famous hypnotist who does this. I think his name's like Daryl Brown or something like that, and he hypnotizes people through screens. He puts them into a hypnotic trance through screens. And I 100% think that the CIA is doing this, right? And they're putting people into hypnotic trances, and then they're implanting inside of them a hatred for certain words so that they have negative emotional responses. Words like communism, I think welfare is one of them, right? Darren Brown, thank you, Eric. I think welfare is one of them, and I think we actually have credible evidence to show that that's the case. If you poll the American public and you say to them, what is your opinion on giving financial aid to the poor? And you ask the question that way, 70% of Americans are in favor of that, right? 70% are, 30% are not, right? Because about 30% of the American populace is just outright psychopathic. So 70% of the American populace is like, yeah, give financial aid to the poor, for sure. If you ask the question, same group of people, same thing. If you say, what's your opinion on welfare? It flips. 30% are in favor of welfare, 70% are against it. Right? That's a trigger word. That's a trigger word. And so if it comes out, if there's a big, like if there's another church commission and there's a big analysis and another MK Ultra program is discovered where they're like, yep, we were using phones to hypnotize people and create trigger words, I'm just going to be like, there you go, called it. These people are dark psychopaths, right? They should all go to jail, obviously. They're not going to, but that's how it should be. Yeah, collectivist, communist, socialist, welfare, workers' rights. Well, they lost control of socialist. They don't have socialist anymore, right? That broke apart. Calling out Destiny as a pedo is wild, but I'm here for it. I mean, it's just, he's part of the group. That's all. He's just part of that group. So it's like pretty, like he's paid by the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is owned by the Clintons still. It's still a Clintonian party, right? Bill Clinton went to Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island like 100 billion times. There's a whole bunch of people who donate to the Democratic Party who were named in the Epstein files. And of course, nobody got investigated over this. Vosh, who comes out of Destiny's group, is himself a fucking pedophile. Like, I just think it's like, again, it's all circumstantial. It's all like surrounding, but it's like it's like, if you're a Catholic priest, I think it's completely correct that people give you the side eye. I think it's completely correct. If you're a Catholic priest, yeah, we should always be looking at every Catholic priest like probably a pedophile. You mean we discovered a gigantic underground pedophile ring in the Catholic Church? Fiddleford's catalog writes, my friend's workplace unionized today. Oh, wow. With a number of 90 workers at a Marriott hotel. Politicians go to this sort of place. The vote was 35 against and 44. Imagine being that 35 against. Like, what's their rationale, I wonder? Like, why are they sitting there doing that? It's just so odd to me. Methane writes, that's the worst part, manipulation on a massive global scale. They're destroying our minds and reality itself. Yeah. It's they're going to lose, right? That's the part about this that I think Westerners are just not accepting, is that the entire rest of the global population sees this for what it is, and they're not going to go along with it, right? Like America at the end of the day, for all its pretentiousness, for all its pomp, for all of its arrogance, really only represents about 5% of humanity, right? If you wanted to be generous and include like the entire West, you could maybe bump that up to about 10%. So about 10% of the global population is living in this delusion and in this just absolute, obvious, grotesque delusion. And the rest of the global population sees through it. It very clearly, I think, sees through it. I think they're being very prescient, and they're not. The bubble has popped, right? It's only people who live within the West that are buying into this idea anymore of Western supremacy and Western goodness, and that we should, and that when the CIA stands up and says something, we should take it seriously and all this kind of garbage, right? Like, if you live outside of America, it's transparent now, and it's so see-through. And the rest of the world is going to move on. The rest of the world is going to continue developing, and they're going to continue trading, and they're going to continue finding ways to stabilize their own country, because now they understand that America is not a stabilizing force, right? And the number one thing that populations look for when it comes to global politics, number one, no question, I don't think it's debatable, is stability. People are willing to accept a certain amount of oppression. People are willing to accept a certain amount of hardship. People are willing to accept a certain amount of injustice as long as it's stable, as long as there's stability. And it's only when the leadership of the country destabilizes that people are willing to kind of throw their hands up and really take a stab at advancing a progressive agenda, because the place has been destabilized anyway, right? So that's what makes these capitalists extremely dim-witted, in my view. Like, these people are deep dimwits. Like, I know people. I have people in my life who are like doctors, lawyers, engineers, teachers, professors, right? Absolutely, and they did quote unquote everything right. Right? They followed all the rules. They did everything they were told to do. Everything. They went to school. They got an advanced degree. They got a job in the top 10%, 5% of their field. They're highly educated, very intelligent, very articulate, very lucid people. They took on a bunch of student debt. They paid that student debt off by working their asses off at these jobs that they're working. They had the 2.3 kids, right? Well, now it's actually 1.3 kids is the average now. We're in such a sharp decline. But they had the kids. They did everything correct. And guess what? They can't buy a house. That means you are ruled by total fucking morons. Like, straight up, brain dead, the stupidest people you've ever met. Those people should 100% have houses. Those people should be looking at a person like me saying, see, John, it worked. Everything that they said was gonna happen, it happened. Look, John. Back in university, you were talking about how, oh, no, it's all bullshit, and they were going to betray, and this is what the Nazis used to do, and all that kind of stuff. And we were all like, haha, oh, John, what are you going to say? Okay, haha, all right, well, we're going to go off, and we're going to trust the system. And look, John, now I've got a house. Right? Proves you wrong, I guess. La, 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 la. Vote conservative. Right? But they didn't do that. Because they're too stupid to do that. Right? And to me, that's the most offensive thing. Like, I can respect evil, right? I can respect evil. Evil makes a certain type of sense, right? I'm going to do something that hurts someone else for my own benefit, right? That makes a certain type of sense. That's the basic conservative MO. But this is just stupid, right? You're betraying huge swaths of people you promised something to so that you can what? Get an extra digit on a screen somewhere? Like, they're just setting themselves up. They're just setting themselves up for some kind of major revolutionary force. Like, it's just moronic. And they seem to love it. Like, they seem to be so pleased with themselves about how stupid they are. Like Chrystia Freeland applauding that Nazi. Transylvanian writes, I think the West had more to gain from offering Navalny to create bad PR prior to the election than Putin, who wanted to use him in a prisoner exchange. I just don't think Navalny matters. Like, I think that, like, it's just a show. Like, I don't think Navalny is important. Like, I'd be very surprised to find out that Putin really cared about Navalny. Like, I'd just be very surprised by that. Yeah, it's gotten worse in fear responses for sure. Darren Brown, love that guy. I used to watch his videos. Oh yeah, Darren Brown, he's very astute. Like, he knows what he's doing. Yeah, XD writes, the CIA did experiments on manipulating collective consciousness, so it's not far-fetched. Yeah. Right? Like, we know this about the CIA, and the idea that they've stopped, like, of course they haven't. Like, of course they're continuing that. Like, of course they're doing that. It's sort of wild to me that we live in this, like, world where we have all this information about this organization, and it's all on the table. And people just do not include it in the way they think about anything. And that somehow they think the CIA is good and working for their interests. Like, as this whole project begins to decline, the CIA is going to become a rogue terrorist organization. Like, more so than it is now. Like, it's not even going to be linked to the United States anymore. It's going to operate for its own, like, it'll start pulling taxes in for itself. Like, that's the kind of shit that's going to start happening. Yeah, hypnosis maybe not 100% the right word, yeah. Mass formation psychosis is the term people have been using for this, yeah. Transylvanian writes, I don't think they need to use hypnosis when they can just drill it into your head by repetition through the entire education system, across the entire media apparatus afterwards. Yeah, of course I have 100% good points. I'm a fucking genius. Everybody should listen to me. I'm the smartest guy in the world. No, I mean, look, I just think that, like, once you see the Emperor has no clothes, and once you're willing to make the break, this stuff becomes obvious, right? It's like that boyfriend or girlfriend that everybody told you, get away from this person, right? But you didn't want to. You wanted to go on the wild adventure. You wanted to get on the motorcycle, right? You were like, I knew it was going to be bad for me and all this kind of stuff. Like, and you kind of knew, right? But you did it anyway. And then you have the terrible experience. They abandon you in a ditch somewhere, right? And it's only afterwards that you kind of go, oh yeah, okay. But, like, imagine if that person showed up in your life again and you were just like, sweet, let's get on the motorcycle again. That's what it's like living in the West. Whereas I think normal people, like people who have self-esteem and who actually give a shit about themselves, would look at that person and be like, get the fuck out of here. Like, get the fuck out of here, you loser. I'm not going to listen to you. Like, I don't believe a word you have to say. Shut up. Fuck off. Like, but that's not how it is in the West. We get on the motorcycle again. Yeehaw. Eric writes, the huge problem with people in general is there's a huge anti-intellectualism movement where people distrust academia and other intellectuals. This is why you get so many people saying that universities are Marxist indoctrination while having no problem listening to frauds that don't use any academic evidence. Yeah. Like, that's the funny part about it, is it's like well, and there's a real, like, puritanical aspect to it, which is if you can show that any academic document anywhere was incorrect in its analysis at any point, then that means the entire institution of academia is false, right? Like, the whole point of academia is to steadily vet out false information. And that at one point, academics can think that something is correct and then change their view with future evidence, right? Because it's a system that unfolds, right? But to try to replace that with basically your buddy Like basically just your buddy and some fraud that's trying to sell you like pills, right? Like don't you think it's a little bit unusual that the people that we're supposed to really be trusting are selling us like what like workout fuel or whatever it is that Alex Jones like you got to take these pills and this will really bulk you up when you do your workout. Or don't you think that's a touch odd, right? Like it's just like you'd think that these guys would actually be interested in like serious academia. Methane writes, I hope you're right about the scope and scale being so contained. I don't think it is. Maybe you're right. I just can't see it because this is all I've ever known. No, I mean, I think if you go to China, like I've read articles, I have articles in my little handy folder right here from China and the South China Press that just are an indictment. Like there's absolutely no way anybody in China or India are looking at America going like, that's the land of the free, the home of the brave. Like it's just like, maybe they come here for various reasons and for various kinds of things, but I don't think there's any fucking illusions anymore. Like I don't think that anybody's pretending anymore. Like the problem is that they're basing their views on a kernel of truth. Western universities are indoctrination factories in fields like political science, international relations, well, economics, for example. I think economics is the key example, right? Is that like you don't get literate people out of the economics fields from these institutions. They're literally not reading economics. Like they are there to learn and to be indoctrinated into the system of capital. That's the reason they're there. And I just yesterday I read an article from a university professor and Fraser Institute guy in the Financial Post that was like the peak of illiteracy. Just like the stupidest thing. Like it sounded like something that your dumb uncle in a bar would have written, right? If he wanted to sound smart. And it's like, this is the best they've got. So I understand. But it's if any system is going to vet those people out, it's going to be that system of academia itself, right? That's the point I'm trying to make. It's not that the system of academia is free from that stuff, right? It's just that the other systems that exist are certainly not free, right? Tinker, good to see you. Opinion on Boeing whistleblower John Barnett? Yeah, he was killed. Boeing killed him. Like, I don't have the source. Like, I don't have a document, but come on. Like, what are we, dumb? Like, he was obviously blowing the whistle on Boeing. He was obviously testifying and confessing to years and years of systemic malpractice. Like, what's going on with Boeing? Like, the top brass at Boeing, the CEOs of Boeing, right? Like these people could do real serious jail time, right? Like you're telling me that you're not installing screws into your planes. Doors are blowing off your planes. Wheels are falling off your planes. Just straight up wheels fall off, right? Of fucking jet planes that are going to fly over major urban centers, right? Like, it's very obviously criminal. Like criminal negligence is what we're looking at. For sure, 100%. Just even given the testimony we already have from this guy. Right? And so Boeing killed him. Like, we don't need to be dim-witted about this. We don't need to mince words. Like, there's going to be an investigation and it's like and they'll come up with some bullshit thing. Boeing will bribe somebody and they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, it was a suicide. He shot himself 12 times in the back of the head. Suicide. Classic suicide. Shot himself in the back of the head 12 times." Like, obviously Boeing killed this guy to shut him up. Like, it just shows you what's going on in the society today. That we're essentially just ruled by corporate kingdoms. There's no such place as America anymore. There's no such place as Nevada or your state or wherever you live. There's no such place as any of that, right? The rulers of those systems are just kind of there to extract as much wealth as they can, while they pay fealty to the real rulers, which are the corporate kingdoms. And if you try to stand up and speak out against the corporate kingdoms, they will shoot you. Here you go. Very clear example. Very clear example. Eggs D writes, funniest shit ever is that super male vitality, Alex Jones, super male vitality, contains soy. You don't want to be a soy boy, so drink soy. Transylvanian writes, there's a small minority of deluded liberals in even countries like China, but luckily they are highly irrelevant and usually just end up emigrating and spreading anti-China bullshit from abroad. Yeah. No, I would say I actually am of the opinion that there is, and right now here, I'm being very speculative today. Today's a very speculative day, but I genuinely believe that one of the things that is built into the fabric and the system of the universe itself is that 10% of every human that is born is a psychopath. And 10% of every human that is born is whatever the opposite of that is, altruistic, right? Is an altruist. And so you end up with 10% on one side and 10% on the other side, with 80% basically just being normies. Right, basically just being a monkey walking around looking at things, right? And it's only, and it takes time and effort to move that needle. So here in the West, I think that we're about 30% psychopathic, because every poll you do, like, should we nuke should we nuke Palestine? 30% of the populace is like, yeah! So 30% of us are psychos, right? And it takes a lot of effort to move that needle and to get that needle. And you need like big educational facilities, and you need enormous cultural practices, and you need religious organizations. You need huge institutions to move the needle away from the 10% into the 30% to get that many psychopaths. And of course, I think you can move the needle further and further and further. Like, you take a look at the Zionists, you take a look at Israel, and Israel is mainly psychopathic. Like, literally, there was a poll from Time magazine, and they asked the question to the Israelis: do you think enough firepower is being used in Gaza? And something like only 2% of the populace was like, yeah, we're using too much. 60% were like, yeah, what we're doing is fine. And then the rest were like, we should use more. So that's pretty psycho, right? We're just committing a mass genocide, very obviously, directly on our border. You can look at it. And people do. They like set up lawn chairs and watch it happen from afar while drinking mojitos and shit. It's a psychopathic culture, right? But you got to be trained into it. And it takes about 10%. You get the 10% of psychos actually take over, and they kill off the 10% of the altruists, and then they take over. And so even if you have a altruistic society, even if you live in a society where the altruists have taken over and they're actually, their institutions are trying to spread that kind of messaging and they're trying to move it in the other direction, right? Well, 10% of the society is still going to be born psychopathic. And they're still going to say, how do I consume everything that is before me and dominate and destroy? Right? So that's why we need to be constantly on guard and constantly vigilant. We picked up Otto von Strausser, and he ran a business of sorts in Montreal. Wild. It's primarily Shanghaiese, some of the most stuck-up and snobby people you'll find in China. They literally think they're better than the rest of China. I mean, that kind of elitism always seems to happen, doesn't it? But it's very dangerous. Tinker says, right wing was blaming Dai and minorities. Of course, minorities. Just blame minorities, right? Like, the right will always go along with it. Oh, it's the minorities. Yeah, of course. The West is very skilled at finding groups with a superiority complex over their fellow citizens and exploiting that. Yeah, Shanghai is one example. Hong Kong is another. Well, the Hong Kong story is a little bit different because they had they were ruled by the British for 100 years. And, like, China basically views Hong Kong as being, like, abused, right? Like it's just an abused nation that has experienced abuse. And so every time they're dealing with Hong Kong, it's like they're dealing with somebody who has a mental illness, because they have this kind of like Western bias that is so obviously like infecting the way they think. People talk with a right winger about the losses of outsourcing. Instead, they think it's immigrants. Yeah, it's amazing how easy it is, eh? It's just base xenophobia. Like it was something I was thinking about today, which is that I getting over nationalism and getting over your internal biases, getting through the idea that I'm the best and my family is the best and my city is the best and my state is the best and my country is the best. Getting through that is extremely difficult, but extremely necessary, I think, if a nation wants to be successful in a globalized world and a globalized economy, right? That you simply cannot survive with this hyper nationalistic worldview that says I'm the best because of where I was born. And the trouble, of course, is that I think it's very natural. I think it's natural for people to have these sorts of biases. It's natural to believe that my family is the best and that my father is the strongest and that I wish to defend my bloodline and I wish to defend my town and my city and my culture and all these things. I think it's normal and it's natural, right? It's built into the system in a certain regard, but it's only like normal if you're a kid, and that as you mature and as you grow up, you begin to see that like, okay, like it's not simply enough to say I'm the best, therefore what I say goes, right? Like we're going to encounter a lot of people out in the world, and if everybody's walking around saying I'm the best, so what I say goes, that's no way to build a society and a civilization that's going to go anywhere. Right? That's not going to be successful. You're just going to be a bunch of little kids banging into one another forever. That very clearly a more successful model is to say, okay, we were just born here. We're trying our best, right? Maybe we do have things to be proud of. Maybe there are things that we could point at and say like, hey, look, we did this thing. That's great, right? But that doesn't mean we can enforce it on other people and inflict it on other people. And we're just not there. Like, we're just not there at all. Oh, yeah, wokeness. At this stage in the game, if somebody's going to stand up and say woke in seriousness, like, I understand woke has become just kind of colloquial now, and people are using it in reference now. But if you're actually going to stand up and defend points using this whole woke thing, you're just probably a racist, right? You're probably just a xenophobe. Like you're literally going to stand in front of Martin Luther King is woke, right? Like that's all. Like as soon as you recognize that these guys are just obviously racists and they're using the word woke so they don't have to say black or they don't have to say queer, right? So they found a little code so that they can defend themselves from accusations of obvious overt racism, even though they're obvious overt racists. Like everything becomes more crystallized, right? Like Ben Shapiro becomes much more decipherable and much clearer once you realize that he's just using the word woke instead of black. Like the rhetoric that's coming out of these guys is as racist as anything you heard during the civil rights movement, right? And like, one of the things that's going on the social media right now is like the X-Men released a new cartoon. It's like the 90s X-Men again. They're doing more of it. And a bunch of right-wingers are losing their mind because X-Men is woke. And it's like, you realize that like the X-Men were an allegory for the civil rights movement, right? Like you realize that the X-Men were always about civil rights and gay rights. Like you realize that, right? Always. Since their inception. Since day one, comic one. They were about a group of people, of diverse people, no less. Like literally day one, the first X-Men squad are like a diverse group of people who are outsiders in the society trying to seek equality and acceptance within that society. Right? Woke. It's just another sign that our society is full of fucking dimwits, and that we're just very stupid, and we deserve everything that's coming for us. And it's not going to be pretty at all. Like, and I think that that's quite serious. Like, now we've got, I read the CBC article on this before, but now it's the National Post. So I'm actually looking forward to the National Post perspective, because the National Post is usually much more hysterical and much more racist, and like openly so. Yeah. John, history began on October 7th, yet they believed things only got woke just yesterday. Exactly. No, it's just a society of children. That's all. Secret RCMP report warns Canadians may revolt once they realize how broke they are. That's a great headline, by the way. That's way better than the CBC's headline. The CBC's headline was much more like, RCMP releases report about tough economic times for Canadians' futures. Right? That's what they said. Secret RCMP report warns Canadians may revolt once they realize how broke they are. Right from the get-go, the report authors warn that whatever Canada's current situation, it will probably deteriorate further in the next 5 years. Yeah, man, the National Post, these guys know how to do propaganda right. These guys know how to whip up hysteria, man. Look at the picture that they're using. Like, look at the picture that they're using, man. Like, so the people who, like, uncritically read the National Post are fascists, right? Very, very straightforward. This is written by Tristan Hopper, who I actually did a video about Tristan Hopper because he's such a dim-witted moron. He wrote something about the Capitalist Manifesto. There was this Capitalist Manifesto thing that the National Post did that fell completely flat because it was just everybody writing in it was a dim-witted, illiterate moron who didn't have anything interesting to say. That was the reason why I didn't really take, is because it was so boring. And completely uninterested and completely disconnected from reality. So even the fascists were just like, I mean, I guess, and they didn't care at all. And Tristan Hopper was one of those guys, just a total sellout. And who doesn't know anything, but boy howdy does he know how to do propaganda. A secret RCMP report is warning the federal government that Canada may descend into civil unrest once citizens realize the hopelessness of their economic situation. The coming period of recession will accelerate the decline in living standards that the younger generations have already witnessed compared to earlier generations, reads the report, entitled Whole of Government 5-Year Trends for Canada. For example, many Canadians under 35 are unlikely to ever be able to buy a place to live, it adds. The report, labeled secret, man, they're really trying to hit this secret thing. Man, it's crazy. Like, this is an internal document, right? That got released because of a Freedom of Information request. The report, labeled secret, is intended as a piece of special operational information to be distributed only within the RCMP and among decision makers in the federal government. A heavily redacted version was made public as a result of an access of information request filed by Matt Malone, an assistant professor of law at British Columbia's Thompson Rivers University, and an expert in government secrecy. Describing itself in an introduction as a scanning exercise, the report is intended to highlight trends in both Canada and abroad that could have a significant effect on the Canadian government and the RCMP. Right from the get-go, the report authors warned that whatever Canada's current situation... Oh, we got a huge raid coming in on Twitch. Good to see you guys. Good to see each and every one of you. Thanks for being here. Right from the get-go, the report authors warned that whatever Canada's current situation, it will probably deteriorate further in the next 5 years. For the raiders that are coming in, what I'm reading is an article from the National Post. Secret RCMP report warns Canadians may revolt once they realize how broke they are. So literally the RCMP, who's kind of like I guess like the FBI in America, uh, uh, they are essentially saying to each other, yeah, Canadians are gonna fucking freak out. We can't buy houses. We're falling into poverty, right? In addition to worsening living standards, the RCMP also warns of a future increasingly defined by unpredictable weather and seasonal catastrophes, such as wildfires and flooding. Most notably, report authors warn of Canada facing increasing pressure to cede Arctic territory. Another major theme of the report is that Canadians are set to become increasingly disillusioned with their government, which authors mostly chalk up to misinformation, conspiracy theories, and paranoia. Yeah, certainly not the fact that, like, food has tripled. Certainly not the fact that homelessness is spiking. Like, certainly not the fact that we're going through, like, an obvious and major economic crisis that's probably worse than the Great Depression. Right? I've seen metrics that and comparisons that show that depending on where you are, this is worse than the Great Depression. We've got a huge, massive tent city here in the city of Toronto. What do you think's going on with all these people? But yeah, it's misinformation. That's what it is. Law enforcement should expect continuing social and political polarization, fueled by misinformation campaigns and an increasing mistrust for all democratic institutions, reads one of the report's overarching considerations. I mean, I think the mistrust for all democratic institutions comes from the fact that they're not doing anything about any of this, right? That they're looking at the homelessness, they're looking at the desperation of the populace, and they're basically just standing by and watching it happen, right? Real straightforward. Ironically, one of the report's more heavily redacted sections is the one carrying the subtitle, Erosion of Trust. The past 7 years have been marked by social and political polarization in the Western world, reads a partial first sentence, with the entire rest of the section deleted by government censors. The censor's pen also deleted most of a section warning about paranoid populism, capitalizing on the rise of political polarization and conspiracy theories. Have been populists willing to tailor their messages to appeal to extremist movements, reads the section's one non-redacted sentence. I mean, the National Post is really great at appealing to extremist movements. It's essentially the National Post's business model. In terms of declining living standards and inaccessible home ownership, the RCMP's warnings are indeed in line with available statistics. Canadian productivity, because that's what capitalists care about, right? Forget about the poverty, forget about the homelessness, forget about the food bank usage, forget about the starvation. Productivity. That's what really matters. We're gonna measure productivity. Who gives a shit about anything else? Canadian productivity measured in terms of GDP per capita, a terrible way to measure the metric of your economy, has been trending downward since at least the 1980s. But this has accelerated dramatically in recent years, even as per-worker productivity rises in many of our peer countries, because that's all that matters. Productivity, that's the only thing that matters. It doesn't matter if you're sleeping in a tent, as long as you're productive while you're doing it. An analysis last year by University of Calgary economist Trevor Toome found that if Canada had merely kept pace with U.S. productivity growth for the last 5 years, Canada per capita earnings would be $5,500 higher than they are now. You notice how they say per capita, right? That $5,500 higher, that just goes into the pockets of the billionaire class, right? So let's all work our asses off so billionaires can get richer while we sleep in tents. And then the National Post ignores it. Meanwhile, housing affordability. Oh, here's their chance to mention the homelessness problem. Here's their chance to mention the tent cities. Meanwhile, housing affordability has reached worst ever levels in most of Canada's major markets, according to a December analysis by RBC. On average, even condos are now so unaffordable that only 44.5% of Canadian households had sufficient income to buy one at current prices. As for single-family homes, only the richest 25% of Canadian households had any hope of obtaining one. Man, I wonder why our birth rate is collapsing, right? I wonder why our birth rate's at 1.3 right now. Just a complete disaster. Economic forecasts for the next 5 years and beyond are bleak, reads the RCMP's assessment of the rest of the decade, even adding a quote from French President Emmanuel Macron that the end of abundance is nigh. I mean, no, it's just the extraction from the billionaire class. Like, it's not as though we were ever in a period of abundance. It's that we live in a system of false scarcity, right? That the capitalists need to create a system of false scarcity to continue driving us into wage slavery jobs, right? That's how it actually works. Domino Big Boy, good to see you. Macron was a tosser. Yeah, there you go. We got good commentary coming up. So the RCMP is aware of it. Right? That means that our politicians are aware of it. And we all know what their strategy is going to be. Right? Their strategy is not going to be to increase wages. Their strategy is not going to be to force sale of houses. Their strategy isn't really going to even be to build more properties. Their strategy isn't going to be to ban Airbnb. Their strategy isn't to do anything that's going to affect the outcome of the or the wealth extraction of the billionaire class. That their strategy is going to be to crack people's heads. How do we know that's true? Like, that's what their strategy is going to be. Their strategy is going to be to increase police budgets, right? They're going to increase police budgets. They're going to get more cops, and they're just going to crack people's heads. That's their strategy, and that's what they're going to do. And that's all they've ever done. I mean, we've got a fellow on Twitch writing Capital's days are numbered. Yeah, we'll see about that. Right? We'll see about that. I am not confident that the people of Canada are willing to actually do what needs to be done. Right? Like, I'm not confident that the people of Canada are clever enough to understand what needs to be done. I think we're just going to keep going to the ballot box and keep passing the box between conservative and liberal and griping about how bad everything's getting. Right? Like, we're not going to surround the halls of power. We're not going to actually get, like, prolonged mass labor strikes. Within the labor movement itself, there is a plan to move towards a general strike in 4 years. So this should be the absolute plan for everybody, is to plan major actions around that. Around the labor movement striking, because that's the most major event that's going to happen in the next 5 years is the labor strikes that are coming, especially if the unions can do it collectively, simultaneously, all at once, which is exactly what the society needs, is a mass general strike. But it's not the only thing that's going to get it done. Right? It's not enough to have labor striking. We need a revolutionary movement. We need people who are actually saying out loud in front of people with power that we could just come in there. Like, that's going to be necessary to get anything done in this society, because that's the only thing that the society responds to. Right? Which is why we're such a ass backwards fail society. Like, we're such a group of losers. Because we can't get anything done without, like, mass mobilization of the populace. And so the capitalist class does everything it can to make sure that the mass mobilization of the populace is either criminalized or disorganized. Right? They're doing everything they can to alienate us from each other. And so we live in a society that's in this constant, perpetual war with itself, where we're constantly fighting and we're constantly bickering and we're constantly at odds with one another and we're constantly struggling for basic shit. The conversation that we're having here in Canada is literally about housing. It's literally about a person's ability to have a place to live. That's embarrassing. That's just straight embarrassing. Like, from a civilizational standpoint, that's like baby gaga goo goo shit. That's like not even kindergarten level. That's like, well, welcome to the world, Canada, you little child, right? That's the kind of shit that pulls countries apart. That's the kind of shit that destroys countries. Because if the country of Canada is not going to protect people's right to have a house, people's right to be able to live in a place or get food, then what's it for? Why should I bother listening to it? Why, when it passes edicts, why should I pay attention? Oh, because you're going to come in here kicking my door and beat the shit out of me with cops. Got it. Yeah, that definitely instills a sense of loyalty. That definitely makes me think, boy, howdy, I should salute from sea to shining sea for sure, for sure. Omnicidal tendencies, general strike, like that's ever going to happen. It is at the two largest unions in the United States have openly stated that their goal is to have a strike in 2028 because that's when both of their contracts are up. So it's they're not doing it in a wildcat strike sort of fashion. They are actually following the rule of law, as if the country they live in gives a shit about the law. But what it means from the perspective of the unions, and this is like the auto union and the steelworkers union, if I'm not mistaken. It might actually be the Teamsters now that I'm thinking about it. In any case, the reason why they're doing it this way is because it maximizes their own success. It maximizes their own. It protects them the largest amount. It means that cops can't come in and kick the shit out of them, right? Whereas when you do a wildcat strike, the cops can come in and kick the shit out of you, and nobody's going to say boo. But if you hold a strike after negotiations break down over a contract, well, that's exactly when you're supposed to strike. And even the United States, as fascist as it is, understands that. So, like, it is going to be a big moment because we're going to see whether or not the United States is actually going to delve completely downward into fascism. But no, I think I disagree with you on this count, Omnicidal. I think that this, in my view, is the moment. This is the moment that everybody should be preparing for. 2028, when the labor unions go on strike, which they've said that they want to do, this is what we should be preparing for. We should be organizing amongst ourselves. If you're not part of a union, you should be organizing in your own groups, creating mutual aid systems, creating understandings with one another to maximize the disruption, to maximize the disruption that happens during those strikes. Because in my view, that's the best shot for everybody. Like if the goal is genuinely to actually pull the ship upwards, right, to pull the plane back up and to try to set the country aright and actually get it moving forward in a way that even makes an iota of sense, well, this is the best chance. This is the best chance, right? And if that doesn't work, then my predictions are correct. That America is going to break apart and it's going to fall apart and descend itself into a civil war, right? Like, so you're going to get conflict no matter what happens. Violent Hippie, phenomenal name, asks, if the U.S. is fascist, what is Israel? The U.S. funds Israel. Israel might as well be another U.S. state, right? Like, so Israel is also fascist. They're definitely more like a Nazi level of fascism, but the United States has been funding it the entire time, right? So that PT Salty says USA ain't gonna civil war, you dolt. Like, what are you talking about? Like, honestly, like, what are you talking about? Like, you take a look at the struggle that's going on the Texan border right now. You take a look at the struggle between Greg Abbott and the federal government, the Biden administration. Like, you take a look at like what we call crime statistics, right? That's how we're discussing it. But it's civil unrest, right? It's civil unrest. Like, once you understand, like what do you think the cop cities are for? Like, why do you think they're building a cop city in Georgia? Right? Like, what do you think that's happening? All right, I think I'm good to just get rid of. I don't think I need like an obvious moron in the chat. Like, if you would like to have a dissenting opinion, please make a point. Don't spam the chat. And don't be like an obvious moron. So. what's a cop city for people across the pond? So, what is happening is that the United States is building a series of what have come to be known colloquially as cop cities. These are basically forts and fortresses that are being built across the United States. The most famous one is happening in near Atlanta, Georgia. And Atlanta, and I am more or less of the opinion, like if you take a look at the map, right? Let's get to the map. The United States is well aware, and the United States government is well aware that climate change is going to become a major crisis, right? It's going to be a major crisis along their borders. It's going to be a major, major crisis, especially New Orleans, but Florida. Florida is going to be a major, 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 major climate change crisis. When the water level comes up, Florida is basically just going to be gone. And you're going to have, especially from Miami, the gusanos from Miami are just going to flee upwards, right? And so they're building a cop city near Atlanta, Georgia to maintain control and to act as a place to send cops out to be able to, the legislation that they've passed fairly recently in the United States basically says that any territory along the coast, cops can basically just kick in doors. There's no civil rights or anything like that. There's no constitution, right? It's just going to be complete chaos. And they're preparing for it. If you type into Google just a cop city, right? Cop City, America, you're going to find it, right? You're going to find it. You're going to find all the information you'd like about it, right? There's plenty of, for God's sakes, I could just do it right now. I don't know why I'm not. Cop City, Atlanta, Georgia. What is Atlanta Cop City? Why are people protesting it? Protest escalated after a demonstrator was fatally shot by police. Dozens of people have been arrested in Atlanta after rocks, fireworks, Molotov cocktails were thrown at officers near the site of the Public Safety Training Center. Not a civil war, though. Right? Not a civil war. Man, it's so wild when dimwits come in here and just act like dimwits. Like, the center has garnered national attention after prompting protesters throughout the city, as well as states like Massachusetts, New York, and Pennsylvania. The debate over the Atlantic Public Safety Training Center has been ongoing. The center is going to be used for specialized training for both law enforcement and fire department service workers. City officials assert that the center could improve policing, while critics claim the effort is militarizing police and endangering communities, which is absolutely the case. Like, the goal for the United States moving forward is to militarize its police forces, which it's been doing for decades. Like, Obama very famously militarized the police, and they've been police forces all across America have been receiving training from the IDF and all these kinds of places, right? Yeah, no, violent hippie. It doesn't sound like the seed of Orwellianism. And I don't care for Orwell. Like, I think Orwell was a hack, mainly, like a CIA snitch, or sorry, not a CIA, an MIA snitch, who was writing like children's books instead of actually writing like serious literature about these events. Like, if he actually cared that much about what was going on, he should have written about it, right? Instead, he wrote these children's books. MI6, thank you, XD. And yeah, I said MIA. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The major event that is going to happen in America, and we all know it's going to happen, like, unless you've just got your head up your ass and your head is in the sand, is that climate change is going to have a major effect. Like, when the sea levels start to come up, which is going to be sooner than you'd like, you're going to have major disruption along the coasts, right? And so the response from the United States is essentially to militarize its police, and they're going to declare martial law. That's what they're going to do. They're going to declare martial law, and they're just going to start kicking in doors and cracking people's heads. And don't be too surprised if it's during this period of time that, like, these detention centers along the border start to really ramp up, and you start to see, like, extermination squads. Like, the entire method and the entire way that the United States has been acting in the rest of the world is going to come home to roost. Like, that's just historically true. That the way countries and states operate in the world is how they operate at home. That they have trained thousands and thousands of military personnel in the Middle East to essentially be terrorists and Nazis, and those terrorists and Nazis are going to come home and they're going to govern like terrorists and Nazis. That's exactly what's going to happen in the United States. And my feeling is that the United States as an entity is not going to be able to withstand this. That states are going to begin to break off from this, and that they'll begin to acknowledge that the United States military has become a terrorist organization, because that is what it is. Like, it doesn't exist for national security. Smedley Butler was right that the United States military exists to steal resources from other nations and kill their people. And as the United States dollar begins to dwindle, and as the United States, I don't think it's going to go this far this easy, though. Americans are armed to the teeth. Yeah, a certain type of American is armed to the teeth, right? And those types of Americans who are armed to the teeth are going to work with the police, right? They're going to work with the police, and they're going to go after minority groups, and they're going to go after small groups. They're going to go after these tiny groups, right? That's just historically how this stuff goes, right? You're correct that Americans are armed to the teeth, but they're going to work with the police, right? Like those gun nut guys and the guys in the militia groups, they're going to work with the police. Yeah, on Your Life Better, they have a list of all the known cop cities built in the state. Well, thank you, Skull Knight. I appreciate that. Is your life better? Cop Cities USA. Jesus. I didn't think it was this many. Facility open in dark blue. Yeah, so they're not open quite yet. Oh, hold on. Under construction. Yeah, so it looks like if it's black, it's under construction. Yeah, here we go. Saving this source. Thank you. Like this is the future of American quote-unquote policing. This is the militarization of the police force, so that when the crisis of climate change begins to have its maximum impact, the United States will be able to suppress and subjugate the populace as effectively as possible. Like, America has always been a barbarian state. It's just had enough prosperity that the worst elements of that barbarism have been kind of on the back burner. And a lot of their barbarians have gone overseas to inflict pain on Muslims overseas. Well, those guys are coming home. And when they come home, they're going to move to Cop City, right? They're going to move to the Cop City that exists in their state, right? And they're going to treat the populace as an enemy. That's how this is actually going to go, right? They're going to treat the populace as if they are cattle that need to be controlled. And when people start to rebel from what is obviously happening here, they'll just be put down like cattle. Like, and if the response to it is, oh, well, America's awash in guns, well, then that means you're going to have a civil war, doesn't it? And I'm actually more or less of the opinion that the power structure and the capitalists want a civil war. I think that the capitalists are more or less in favor of a civil war, because a civil war means that they can deal with some of the rabble, right? A civil war means they can become openly anti-communist, openly fascist, and they can just start clearing the areas out, and they can just start shooting people. And it means that if you have a conflict between two groups of workers, well, it means they're not shooting at the capitalists, doesn't it? So it's just absolutely like this is the future of America, and I don't think there's any way to stop it at this point. Like I think that America is going to have this internal civil war where it turns against itself. Groups of people are going to fight one another, and states are just going to start breaking off from the union because they're going to start to realize that this whole thing is off the rails. Right? That's how it goes historically. That when empires decline, they break apart. And America is just like this fever dream, man. Like, it's only existed for like 150 years. It just like across North America went, we're the greatest in the world, and then vomited itself all across the rest of the world, convinced everybody that they're basically Nazis, and now the entire rest of the world is pushing them back into their borders. And the entire rest of the world is basically just going to be like, okay, America, whatever you say, ha ha ha. And they're just going to trade amongst themselves while America collapses. Because we have no systems. We're building no infrastructure. This is the infrastructure that we're building. This is the infrastructure that America is building. Yeah, New Mexico was actually taken from Mexico only 110 years ago. Right? Like, that's not long. That's not long ago at all. That's like literally 2 people ago. Not even. Like, straight up, you could have a person whose father was alive when that happened. Yeah. Like, we are absolute, like, the infrastructure that America is building is this militarization of police. They're not building rail infrastructure. They're not building hospitals. They're not building schools, right? Quite the opposite. They're defunding all of that. And what are they funding? This is what they're funding. You cannot maintain an empire this way. You cannot maintain a country this way. It's just not possible. It's not feasible. Like, eventually what starts to actually happen is that you start to lose the ability to administer your institutions because people will no longer sign up for them, because people will see them for what they are, that it will become more and more difficult to actually get people to operate this administration. This is what happened over the fall of the Roman Empire, right? Is that people simply stopped signing up for the Roman military because they started to see and started to acknowledge what it actually was. They started to see that it was a horrible thing that we were doing. They started to understand that what we were doing and how we were acting in the world through the Roman Empire was unacceptable. And so the governors, the people who had power within the Roman Empire, stopped having the military capability and stopped having the administrative power to be able to actually maintain power of the northern provinces, stop maintaining power of the African provinces that they had taken over. Right? And the people in those regions just started to say, yeah, we're obviously not part of Rome. Like, we don't give a fuck about you. And you obviously don't give a fuck about us, so go away. And there was nothing the Romans could do about it because they couldn't send troops because nobody signed up for the military. That's what's actually going to happen in America. People are going to stop participating in these systems as they begin to see how harmful they actually are. And non-participation, and there's going to be massive acts and dramatic acts. Like, we are going to be alive. I believe that I am going to be alive to see massive public acts of violence that are done specifically to make a point. That's where this is all going to go. That the system of capital is not just going to silently slink away. It's going to attempt to exert itself through acts of serious violence, and those acts of serious violence are going to be filmed and spread across the world. And the entire rest of the world is going to go, yeah, we got to get away from these guys. We've got to isolate these guys. We can't trade with them. We can't talk to them. We can't negotiate with them. We've got to isolate these guys. And that's exactly what's going to happen. The isolation process has already begun. We're already going into a major financial decline. And because we don't manufacture anything, because we don't make anything except cops, the entire rest of the world is basically going to say, so what is it that you guys do? Like, what is it that you actually make? And we're going to be like, we could give you dollars. And the rest of the world is going to go, yeah, we're not interested in your dollars. Like, do you have any resources? Do you have anything that we could actually get from you? And the answer is going to be no. So bye. Right? Bye. Yep. In 2023, the U.S. Air Force struggled to meet their recruitment quota and are trying to innovate new ways to recruit. Exactly. Exactly. The process has already begun. People are already aware of what is going on. Like, if you look seriously at what is actually happening in Israel, in Palestine, there's no way that you can join the military. There's no way that you can look at that and think to yourself, oh yeah, that's a respectable institution that I'm definitely going to get on board on, right? There's a respectable institution that I'm 100% going to throw my chips in and I'm for sure going to get involved in 100%. Yeah, genocide. Yeah, that's what we do. We're the fucking empire. Bum, 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 bum. That's what we do. Like, we're the fucking Death Star going in there blowing the place up. For sure, sign me up. Right? The only people who are on board with that are fat loser gamers. I think my favorite, like fucking Destiny chuds. My absolute favorite thing that came out is the Pentagon did a report recently, and they said that if there was a draft, 77% of Americans would be ineligible because of mental illnesses and weight issues and health issues. So the Americans have poisoned their own citizens to such a degree that the vast majority of them are unfit for military service. Like, and yet the entire power of the United States exists through their military power. Like, we're ruled by dimwits. The people who are ruling us are deeply stupid. Right? Forget about evil. Forget about evil. I mean, they're obviously evil. But like, you would prefer to be led. If your leadership was evil, you would prefer that they were smart. Right? Because a smart evil person will do things that have the veneer or have the quality of goodness, right? That have positive outcomes for people, because an evil person will understand that that's how you maintain power, and that's how you maintain control, and that's how you maintain order, right? When your strategy is bread and circuses, well, that means that you have to give bread, doesn't it? That means that you actually have to put on a circus, doesn't it? If your strategy is bread and circuses, well, then give bread, right? And even if you're an evil Machiavellian psychopath, you understand that you've got to give bread. Well, where's the fucking bread? Yeah, I think you're right, Skull Knight. It really feels like Project 2025, which is a Heritage Foundation project coming up here. Is going to happen regardless of who wins the upcoming election. Absolutely. No, I think that's absolutely the truth, my man. Like, the Democrats and the Republicans are allies. I'll say this until I'm blue in the face, right? I'm going to say this until I'm blue in the face and until people finally start to recognize it and realize it. The Democrats and the Republicans are allies. They work together. They're not interested. They're not interested in actually improving anything for anyone. What they have done is they have pit the populace against one another into a red-blue formula where half the populace is red and half the populace is blue, and then they've pit that populace against themselves and against each other so that they'll vie for power between two capitalists to maintain the system of capital. Like, this is what's actually going on. And the Democrats exist to be the good cop, maintain the status quo, maybe improve things by 0.2% over 20 years, right? Just to throw a crumb in the direction so people will be like, well, I guess it's better than the Republicans. And then the Republicans come in and destroy things, right? And so if you take a look at the trajectory of that system, well, that means that your country is in a constant decline. And the prevailing ideology, i.e. libertarianism, that exists within the mindset of the right wing, and the Democrats largely, is the best way to build a society is by destroying it. The best way to build a society is to dismantle anything that exists in order to maintain civil order. Yeah, the Democrats are better because they slap pride stickers on bombers. Exactly, dude. Right? Omnicidal writes, the U.S. trade is up 10% and the U.S. dollar is up 40% against any of the BRICS currency. I'll take a source for that, Omnicidal. I think you're just wrong. Like, up 10% from what, their collapse? Right? Like, the United States is losing trade on the world stage by a vast, enormous amount to China. China is trouncing the United States in trade right now, and the United States is panicking about it. Like, up 10% from where? Like if you fall off a cliff and hit the ground and then climb back up 10% and then declare it a success, it's kind of embarrassing. Like, and the US dollar is up 40% against any of the BRICS. Like, 40% from what? Like, what are you talking about? So I'll take a source for your claim. And, like, I also think it's just a fundamental misunderstanding of what the BRICS is trying to do. Like, no individual BRICS member is trying to create dollar hegemony, right? Because they understand that that's a trap, and they don't worship the money the way that Americans do, right? They don't worship capital the way that Americans do. And so to say that, like, oh, the US dollar is up 40% against any one of the BRICS currencies, so who cares, right? What matters is what happened to the dollar previously. That if the dollar declines 5,000% and then goes up 40%, who gives a fuck? Like, who gives a fuck? What matters is the isolation that the United States is going to experience. And what matters is that the BRICS nations are trading amongst one another off the dollar. That's what actually matters. And the fact that none of these nations are going to accept dollars. And that the previous treasury holders, i.e. mainly China, are selling these treasuries and getting rid of these treasuries at an accelerated rate. The United States is becoming isolated on the world stage. And the United States is doing it to itself. It's creating a massive sanction regime. So it's sanctioning everybody. Well, if you sanction everybody, then you're the isolated one, aren't you? Like... it's like the United States is constantly in a perpetual state of saying, I'm just going to take my ball and go home. And finally, everybody said, fine, take your ball and go home. And then they pulled out another ball. Like, if all you fund are police, then all you get are police. And if you don't fund anything else, and if all you fund is your military, then all you get is military. Like, and this is all the United States is funding. Like literally the United States is trying to cut Social Security. The United States doesn't have a healthcare system. It's not funding transit systems. It's not funding social welfare systems. It's not interested in any of this kind of stuff. It's not interested in creating these support systems that are necessary to build civil societies. You need these kind of social systems in order to actually create a civil society and a foundation for people to stand on. And if you don't have them, then you don't actually have a country. You just have a military. That's all you've got. And I don't know why we're pretending like the United States isn't already a military dictatorship. It's got this fake electoral system that where nothing actually happens, where it's just theater that's just put on. The only thing that this fake apparatus actually does is funnel money into where? The military. The military-industrial complex, their budget is almost $1 trillion annually now. Like, who do you think actually has power in this society? Do you think it's the president? Like, and so what we have to do as a people, and what we have to do as individuals, and what we have to do is get to know our neighbors. That's the scariest thing ever, I think, for millennials and for Gen X and Gen Z and all of us. So we actually have to get to know our neighbors. We got to get to know their names. We got to get to know what they do as an occupation. Because this is a project of extraction and abandonment. And when they abandon you, and when the system of abandonment occurs to you, well, you better know somebody. You better have an idea of what you're gonna do. Because the system is going to abandon you. We're watching it abandon thousands of people already. We're watching the homeless encampments just spread throughout the country. We're watching food bank usage triple, quadruple. We're watching housing prices spike. Like, that's abandonment. And if they abandon those people, they'll abandon you. So get to know your neighbors. Build parallel systems of power. Plant that garden. Grow food. Find methods to get that rent down. Do anything you can. Because the powers that be are clearly signaling. Clearly. Could not be clearer. Could not be clearer that the powers that be are signaling to us that their strategy is militarization and police force. That the United States is going to become a very obvious police state. Certain sections of it, I would argue, are already that way. Especially if you're a person of color or a minority of any sort. Like, if you're black living in New York, you've been living in a police state for your whole life. For sure. It just seems to me like there's a segment of the population that hasn't personally experienced it, and so are in disbelief or don't want to acknowledge it. Right? Like, the Nazis thought that they were doing the right thing. That's the thing that I think people should really begin to clue into. Like, the Nazis thought that they were doing the right thing. They believed in what they were doing, and they talked about the righteousness of their project and how it was correct and true to do. We're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to make exactly the same arguments. When we erect these cop cities, when we flood our streets with cops, when you're walking down your street and there's an armed military officer with a AR-15 standing on the street corner, and when you walk by him, he says, "Papers." Like, that shit's coming. And he'll have a little scanner. And he'll scan your, or you'll have to do a thumbprint scan. Right? Or an eye scan. That'll be a good one. Ooh, maybe they'll just put a chip in you and they'll just scan the chip. Right? Let's get some real, like, Revelations Mark of the Beast shit. Thought experiments into this shit. Like, all this tech is already here. Every single day I watch people do that thumbprint scan on their phone. Every single day I watch people open up their phone by looking at it and clearly getting a face scan. Every single day I see that. What, you think they're not going to militarize that? You think they're not going to turn that against us? You think they're not going to look at us and be like, oh yeah, we should have, like, face scanners, right? So if people come into this area, we can just scan them. What we'll do is we'll put police at every subway stop, right? No, even better. We don't even need to have police. We'll just have cameras set up so that as people go through, we'll scan their faces as they go through, right? Like, this is what they're going to do. And we're all just going to accept it. It'll just become normal. Just like the NSA mass surveillance system became normal. Nobody gives a shit. Right? Yeah, it's not a question of if, but when, and which new security measure is next. Yeah, they're already doing that. Yeah. Well, and where it's going to get really brutal, like, uh, uh, where it's going to get really brutal is it's going to turn into a, like they're already just doing like mass pickups, right? Like that's already happening. I really recommend people read The Divide. Matt Taibbi wrote it. I think it's a big reason why he got crucified in the media, because he wrote this book that really exposed the United States prison system and its plans for the and how it just basically rounds people up. It just picks people up off the street. You have cops who need to fulfill quotas, right? Uh, uh, yeah, not tonight, Skull Knight. Sorry, dude. We'll get that set up. I'm sorry that it's happened this way, but we'll get it set up, okay, bud? I would like to talk to you, but yeah, life takes you away, doesn't it? Life just whisks us all away. Thanks for being here, bud. I do appreciate it. It is very wild watching a society turn against itself like this. And even stranger is watching huge segments of the population within that society deny it. That to me is the strangest phenomenon to witness. That very clearly the society is turning on itself. And there are clearly powerful people in the society that are fueling this, that are desiring that conflict because it means that they can make off with the spoils. And it's very, very wild and very, very strange to live in a society where huge segments of the population deny that it's happening, or if they don't deny that it's happening, seem to be fine with it and seem to be arguing that this is normal, or seem to be arguing that this is a you problem as they live in their gated communities. That to me is the strangest part about living in this society at this moment. That we so very clearly and obviously have major issues happening. Not minor, not small little things, not piecemeal stuff. Major, serious, massive, civilization-breaking shit. Stuff that if you were playing a video game about building the civilization of America and it was happening in your game, you'd probably just restart the game. Because you'd be like, well, I fucked that up. Better just restart this one. Well, we can't restart the game. That's not how it actually goes. So we've just got to deal with it. Oh, we got a fellow on Twitch that writes, World War III is really close kind of shit. We're in World War III, bud. Once you begin to recognize that the conflicts that are happening in the world are not isolated events, right? The reason why you don't think we are currently in World War III is because you seem to think that all of this stuff is isolated events. That the war on terror, the war in Iraq, like this is literally what has happened in the last 25 years. War in Iraq, war in Afghanistan, Yemen, Oman, Ethiopia, Sudan, Somalia, conflict in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood overthrew, and then the military came in, couped that government. War in Syria, right? So we've got war all across here, coups all across Africa, right? Like literally just last year, 5 governments were attempted coups, right? Ukraine war, right? The Ukraine war. Hey, did we forget all about the conflicts that have happened all throughout South America during that period of time? And where is that all coming from? Where are all these wars coming from? Oh yeah, hey, yeah, we got this whole genocide happening right here. right? They are all coming from America. America is the antagonist, protected by gigantic major oceans. Nobody can actually get over here to even bother the United States and Canada as they send troops and erect military bases all over the place. Yeah, it's not happening in the West, so it's not a world war. Exactly. But that's exactly right. Like, this is World War III. We are looking at it. That World War III is in process now. Right now. That you cannot get the kind of destruction that the United States is putting. Like, for God's sakes, the wars that have occurred in the Middle East have been going on for longer than World War II. Like, the reason why Ukraine was such a big moment for everybody was it was finally started happening to a white nation. Like, this is World War III. The battle lines are being drawn. Alliances are being shored up. We are building up to major conflict. The United States wants a major conflict over Taiwan. They absolutely want to destroy shipping and trade from China. Like, they absolutely understand that the primary antagonist for them is China. They absolutely understand that. And they are doing everything they can to make sure, like, what I think the Ukraine war was all about was to, and what this conflict was all about was to ensure that Europe would not pivot towards Russia, who would not pivot towards China, to isolate Europe, to keep Europe on side. Like these are not isolated conflicts. It's all one conflict. The U.S. desensitizes its citizens to brown people dying so that when white people die, it can be sensationalized. Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think it's true. Like, I think that the United States has done the United States is a propaganda machine. It's a propaganda engine. It's a propaganda system, primarily. That everything it projects out into the world, and has for decades and decades, has been about its supremacy, manifest destiny, that it is true and righteous and what it does in the world is good for everybody. Well, that's over. Like, that is coming to an end. Even within America, that is coming to an end. And the empire is panicking about it. Like, it's doing things like trying to ban TikTok, as if that's a serious thing that's actually going to happen. Like, we're looking at an enormous and major crisis that is happening internally, and it's getting very clear. Like, we keep getting report after report after report that the power structure is desperately concerned about the youth of the nation. Young people's happiness has fallen sharply for Canada and the United States in global rankings. This is from the CBC. The latest edition of the World Happiness Report shows people in Finland are first in overall happiness. Canada is in 15th place, down 2 spots from last year, while younger people are way down in the rankings in a newly added category. Finland has the world's happiest people for the 7th year in a row to mark the UN's International Day of Happiness. The report is powered by data from the Gallup World Poll and analyzed by a global team led by the University of Oxford. Following in order for overall contentment are those living in Denmark, Iceland, and Sweden, based on factors linked to a country's prosperity, as well as life expectancy, social bonds, or having someone to count on, and freedom from corruption. Rounding up the top 10 are Israel, because we subsidize it, the Netherlands, Norway, Luxembourg, Switzerland, and Australia. For the first time in the 12-year history of the survey, the United States is out of the top 20, falling to 23rd place, down from 15th place, due to a big drop in the sense of well-being of Americans under 30, the annual report shows. Separate rankings by age group were compiled for the first time for the report, and there were worrying findings for both the United States and Canada. In most countries, life satisfaction typically drops gradually from childhood through adolescence and into adulthood, the authors said, and people aged 15 to 24 are still reporting greater life satisfaction than older adults, the authors said. But the happiness age gap is narrowing in Western Europe and recently reversed in North America due to falling life satisfaction among the young under the age of 30, it said. Conversely, in sub-Saharan Africa, life satisfaction has increased among the young. In North America, Australia, and New Zealand, life evaluations in 2021 to 23 were lowest among the young, rising gradually with age to be the highest among the old. The age gap favoring the old is evident in all four countries, while being much larger in the United States and Canada, the report said. Yeah. The boomers have all the wealth. The boomers have all the money. The boomers have access to all the resources, right? While they throw us into jobs where we can't even pay the rent. Like, what do you think is actually going on? And this is leading, of course, to a precipitous decline in birth rates. To me, I think this is the saddest thing. Like, I never wanted children, so it's something that has not affected me personally. But I can't imagine what it must be like for a person who wants to have children, who wanted to have kids, who wanted to get part of it, and live in this economy, and live in this situation where they have all of their wealth extracted and given to landlords, and they have all of their wealth extracted. Like, imagine being a 30-year-old right now, right? After having so much wealth and time extracted from you from the system of capital, wasting your time with this bullshit education system that gives you a degree for nothing, saddling you with all this debt, and then being a 30-year-old living in an apartment that takes all of your wage to pay for it, and all of the food, right? And having a spouse who's doing the same, and then turning and looking at one another and realizing that you can't afford a child. And then turning and talking to your boomer parents about it, and they say something dumb like, well, you'll just find a way. Because they're so fucking detached because wealth turns people into psychopaths. Like, imagine this. Like, there are going to be, for sure, and without a doubt, huge swaths of the populace. Like, when I turn 50, there are going to be 40-year-olds who missed their chance for children, who wanted them, who knew, who were working for them, and who were trying to make it happen and simply couldn't. It's coming. And that energy, the energy of a betrayed population who were unable to reproduce because of economic factors, is going to be violent. There's no other word to use for it. It's going to be extreme. These people are not going to forgive you. They're not going to forgive the systems of power. They are going to feel betrayed. They are going to be angry, and they are going to be violent. Because our system is too stupid and incapable of providing even the most basic human rights for people, and has instead turned itself into a project of extraction and abandonment. Like, it's the stupidity that gets me. Like, what do we think life is for? Exactly. What do we think we're here to do? Exactly. What is it that we think we're here to accomplish? Exactly. What is it that we actually think that we are spawned into this reality for? Do you think it's to maximize profits for shareholders? Do you think that's the purpose of your life? To just maximize profits for some person you've never met? While they do nothing important whatsoever? And every single time they tank the economy and lay you off, they get bailed out and told not to do it again. And then they go and do it again. Like, what's the purpose of existence? Why are we here? And what's so embarrassing about us? Like, what's so amazingly embarrassing about Westerners is that we can still. It wouldn't even be that difficult to do. We could erect a system that ensured that everybody had their food and shelter taken care of as a function of the society. That the society simply said, oh, hey, you're here, welcome. Here's your food, here's your shelter. What are you going to do with the time you've got here, do you figure? We could have created an oasis, a temporal oasis, so that the people who spawn into this reality could have lived in literal gardens and lived in serenity and peace. And it would have actually been easy to do. It would be easy to do today. But we're still basically monkeys. We're still caught in our monkey self. We're still essentially scrabbling around throwing shit at one another. Basically. Pleasure seeking, trying to find our own internal confidence, right? Looking for love, trying to have any impact that we possibly can in this reality while we're here, trying to decipher what's going on in this reality before we decay and die and return to the source energy that spawned us in the first place. And in the interim, instead of recognizing the enormous power of what we are, the enormous grandeur of the journey that we find ourselves on, the incredible amazement and power of the reality that we can actually communicate with one another as spawned in quantum beings into this reality. Instead of that, we all fucking work at McDonald's and shit. We're all just fat, gross, lazy, stupid monkeys. None stupider than the people who are in charge. And we seem to like it that way. We seem perfectly happy with that. And we erect these fake-ass gods. A god like America. A god like money. And we worship those gods. And their prophets like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. And pretend like those were the holy scriptures that they were writing. Well, if you base your principles on fake bullshit that doesn't actually exist and doesn't matter, then don't be too surprised when they collapse under your feet. And things are just getting so fucking childishly obvious at this point. Like, if you want to build a civilization, the best way to do it is to probably just build it. Forget about this circular, circuitous reasoning that comes out of the death cult that says you need to incentivize this through lower taxation and do this kind of stuff. It's all just death cult reasoning. That if you want to build something, the best way to do it is to build it. Is to get everybody together, draw up a plan, and then do it. That's how you actually build something. You don't incentivize a free market and hope that some innovator entrepreneur will come around with an idea in order to, because you know what actually happens? They erect slave systems. That's what entrepreneurs do. That's entrepreneurial. There's your American innovation. There's your capitalist innovation. Because the best innovation a capitalist could ever come up with is you do it. I don't want to do it. You do it. And I'll get paid for it. And that's the whole system of capital in a nutshell. You do all the work. I do nothing at all. I get the money. You get a wage that you give back to me so that you can get food and shelter. That's the system of capital. And we all seem to love it. We all seem over the fucking moon about it. When instead we could have a system that says, here's your food and shelter. What? No, we're not going to withhold it. We do ask that you put in a modicum of labor so that we can grow the food and distribute the food and maintain the shelter and maybe build some new shelter, sure. But certainly no more than that. Certainly nothing extra. And if there's nothing to do, then do nothing. Just live. Just be here. Just exist in this magical space that we find ourselves in, collectively together. Maybe we could do something that would actually matter. Maybe we could actually build something that's actually going to stand the test of time or last at all. Like, the most embarrassing thing about American quote-unquote civilization is that in 500 years it's gone. Like, none of these buildings are going to last. I walk here in downtown Toronto, they've erected these condo buildings. They're mainly made out of glass. They're gone. Like, they're not going to be around like the pyramids. They're not. People aren't going to walk through New York and be like, wow, it's the city of New York. It'll be rubble. The water levels will come up. The subway system will be unusable. People will flee from New York and Manhattan Island. It'll turn into a ruin of itself. There might be like minor restoration projects here and there that people will try to do. And eventually, people will just stop trying because they'll have moved on and they'll leave these ruins. And the buildings will fall over and in a few hundred years, they'll be fucking gone. That's what's so pathetic about our society. There isn't going to be a shred of evidence that these places were here. They'll just be stories and lore. We'll have photos, if they survive. Like, huge amounts of information will just get deleted from the internet. If the internet even survives. Like, we're such a short-sighted people. We're such a short-sighted people. We don't care about what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone in a year, let alone in 400 years. We're just monkeys stuffing food in our face and watching pornography. Like, yeah, DM, and it's worse than this. Like, we're a bunch of caveman monkeys who choose scorched earth instead of taking care of each other. And, like, the ideology and the ideological, like, gymnastics, the mental gymnastics that's required to make sure people don't have access to food and shelter is stunning to see. It's staggering to watch. People try to justify other people's starvation. And try to justify people living in a state of total franticness and a state of total desperation. The justification for keeping people hungry is that it'll incentivize them to work harder, or they need meaning in their life. Yeah, it'll incentivize them to work harder for food. So what you're describing as wage slavery Yeah, and it'll certainly give them meaning, the meaning to find food, you dark fucking psychopaths. And these are the people at the top, by the way, that say this shit. This is your Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson makes this argument. Like, we live in a bleak and dark society that works as hard as it possibly can to ensure people go hungry, while throwing away the food it overproduces. Like, that is a bleak, dark death cult, without a doubt at all. Like, you can't get darker than this. We're going to throw away 40% of our food while people go hungry, and tell them it's for their own good. That's some Nazi shit right there. And that's who we are. And that's what we do. And we're not interested in fixing it. To me, that's the worst part. That if we were living in a society that was actually trying to fix its problems and failing, if we were actually facing the problems that we were looking at and failing, then I wouldn't speak so harshly about Western civilization. Because the universe is huge and vast and powerful. That you can't stand against God and expect to win if God's inclination is your destruction. Yeah, tough shit. It doesn't matter what you do if the earth turns on you. It doesn't matter what you try. If the gods decide your fate is death, then so it shall be. And if in the face of that, you're doing everything you can to prevent it, well, there's honor at least in that. There's something decent in that at least. In trying to solve a problem and failing, but we're not even trying. We're not even interested in trying. We're still having a debate as to whether or not there's a problem to solve. And many of us are still walking around saying, well, that sounds like a you problem. As if after the people who are experiencing it get eradicated or destroyed from it, the problem is not going to turn and affect those very people. To me, that's the most embarrassing part. That we're not even trying. Eric writes, I had a conservative telling me, why would company should provide the food for free? AKA, they need to be greedy before caring for your fellow man. Yeah, I mean, why should you feed a child? Right? Like, why do we feed children? They should work for that food, right? It builds character. Right? Like, watching people try to starve people systemically is crazy to me. It's just insane to watch. Like, and what kills me, right? What kills me is that the worst the conservatives can offer is, well, if you let someone have food and shelter, they'll just sit on the couch and do nothing. As if that's worse than homelessness. As if that's worse than starvation. This is how bleak and narcissistic and pathetic these people have become. That they genuinely are arguing to your face that people should experience homelessness and starvation because otherwise they would be comfortable on a couch. And yet, if you commit a crime, where do you go? Well, you go to a cell and sit on a couch. And they're more than happy to pay your food and rent then. Like, there's something wrong with the West. There's something deeply wrong in the heart and the soul and the mind of the West. That it isn't simply an economic negotiation. It isn't simply a lack of education. That we have within our consciousness, for whatever reason, a deep desire for self-immolation and self-destruction. We want to destroy and consume everything around us, and we want to destroy and consume ourselves. We are propelled forward by the death impulse. And we have erected, without a doubt, a capitalist death cult. And it's senseless and it's pointless, and we don't need to do it. We don't need to do it. That I would much rather live in a society of people lounging around doing nothing. If I walked out of my apartment and saw just people sitting in the parks, sitting on the beaches, laying in fields, reading books in libraries, standing around talking to one another, milling about, not going to factories, not going to McDonald's, not putting on uniforms, not mining, not doing any of this stuff. That if all the labor that anyone ever did was just to produce the food we have and maintain the structures that we have, and then everybody just basically spent their day sitting around doing nothing, I would much rather live in that society. I would much rather live there. I would much rather be surrounded by people who are in discussion and who were idle than live in this society that withholds food and shelter, keeps people in a state of total fight or flight, keeps people scared, keeps people destabilized, keeps people in a state of total concern, so that they're fearful that they and their children might be homeless, that they and their children won't have food. But it means that you get to have McDonald's. There's something wrong with the West. There's something wrong with the soul of the West. People are going to analyze this for hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. People are going to ask a basic question of this society. How did we turn on ourselves so effectively? How did a culture and a society and a civilization that had all of these resources, that were secure and safe militarily, that lived in abundance, surrounded by all of the resources it could have possibly needed to succeed, how did this society turn on itself and destroy itself so effectively? How did that occur? And the answer is that we exist in a structure, in a structural society that is, by its very definition and by its very structure, antagonistic. That we are in a perpetual civil war. We are constantly fighting with one another, and the people that run the place tell you so. They call it competition. Competition breeds innovation. The dumbest possible thing a person can say. The best way to organize a society is to have separated antagonistic groups fight over scarce resources. Can you imagine a stupider thing to believe? If we had tried to do free market capitalism on our journey to the moon, we would have never gotten there. That it required a government program modeled after the Soviet system to even compete. When you live in an antagonistic society that is structurally antagonistic, where one group of people have access to all the resources and another group of people have to sell themselves to those people for access to those resources, that society cannot survive. It will not survive. It is only a matter of time before such a society turns on itself, and that's what we're watching. We're watching a society turn against itself and consume itself and eat itself and destroy itself. And it's going to get worse, and it's going to get faster. And while that's happening, the earth itself is going to turn against us. And I'm more or less of the opinion that it's for the best. That it's about time that the West ate shit. It's about time these genocidal maniacs hit a brick wall. It's about time that the group of people who erected the Roman Empire and the British Empire and the American Empire collapsed inward and isolated itself, so that the entire rest of the world could get on with the job of building real civilization, while we get our shit together and figure out what it means to be alive and what it means to be here on the planet. I think the most staggeringly beautiful thing, the most staggeringly beautiful realization that I ever had, and I still am caught off guard when my mind and my consciousness gets to thinking of it and dwelling on it, is that we all do exist in a singular energy. That we all do exist in this quantum energy, and that we come out and rise up and are birthed from this quantum energy. And that we exist as that energy, projecting itself into itself. And that each and every one of us is part of this quantum energy and part of this quantum being that exists. And that we speak with one another and talk with one another. And as we speak with one another and talk with one another, we talk to each other as these quantum beings, springing up from quantum energy. That we are the eyes and the ears and the mouth of the force that created us. What a theologian might call God. That we are the force that is here to discover itself. That we are the universe discovering itself. That we are speaking to one another with the voice of the universe. And we are hearing with the ears of the universe. And we are here to decipher what it is the universe is on behalf of the universe. And instead of doing any of that, we're literally scrabbling around for food and shelter while we throw 40% of the food away and 15% of the shelter sits empty. It's infuriating on a universal scale. I am not merely upset for myself. I am not merely upset for my family. I am not merely upset for my neighbors. I am not merely upset for my people, for my city, for my country, for the world. I am upset for the universe itself. Because instead of taking the fractional brief time that we have to explore the magnificence of our Creator in order to inform our Creator of what itself is, we're fucking around with how we feed ourselves while throwing half of it in the bin. How fucking stupid can you get? So as this apocalypse kicks off, as the waters come up, as the heat rises, as the wildfires spread, as people start to drop off this plane of existence at an accelerated rate, my response is good riddance. You weren't doing your job in the first place. Because if humanity has one single thing it should absolutely be doing, it should absolutely be trying to figure out, hey, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? Why are we here? What is this for? Do you think we're going to discover it while shuffling papers around for Elon Musk? Imagine living in a society that was actually pursuing these questions meaningfully. That was saying, hey, we should provide food and shelter for everyone so that we can get people exploring this plane of existence, so that we can come up with some answers for what the fuck is any of this. But we're not going to do that. No. We're going to hit the brick wall. And it's for the best. I won't lament it when it happens. I don't know if I would describe what it is as universal existential angst. Although universal existential angst. If I was the force of creation, I would just be kind of miffed. Imagine you're playing one of these god simulators that exists. Right? There's a bunch of these now. Populous was the big one back in the day. But Sim Universe or any of these kinds of Spore is one, right? Imagine you're playing one of these kind of video games. Right? And you've built all the housing. And you've planted all the crops. And you're steadily building your populace up. Well, in every single one of those fucking games, without exception, the process is, you've built the housing, and people have given birth, and they've filled the houses. And so you've built more housing. And now you've got people who are doing this production, and they're going over here and doing this. Well, that means that they can explore this resource, and they can explore this idea, and they can research over here, and they can expand, and they can grow, and they can build, and eventually you take to space and all this. At any point during any of those video games, did any of the society collapse inward on itself because a small group of people hoarded all the resources away from the people who are doing the actual work? Can you imagine if you were playing that game? Can you imagine if you were playing one of these God simulators and all of the sudden the populace organized itself so that 5 people owned everything and withheld it from everyone else? And so instead of people actually sleeping in the housing, they were sleeping on the streets. Instead of the food going to those people to feed them, they were just being thrown away and wasted. And you're just there watching it all happen. What would you do if you were playing such a game? And your goal, as the god in the God simulator, is to get into space and to explore around, to see what's going on up there, and to build bigger, and to get larger, and to go do grand adventures and all of this. And it's all collapsing and falling apart because there's 5 assholes holding a piece of paper saying, I own all this. What would you do? I can't imagine how pissed off. Like, if the universe has consciousness, if it has awareness, I can't imagine how furious it would be. That we're just pissing away this opportunity. That we're just sitting here essentially intellectually masturbating. Just pissing around, doing fuck all. Achieving nothing, building nothing. Just destroying and ripping everything apart. Literally what we are doing is threatening a global destruction event. Think about that. That if the heat just spikes up exponentially the way it's been doing, we can all just die, you know. Like, I think that that's the funniest thing about the climate change shit. That nobody seems willing to actually stand up and call this for what it is and say out loud that we can all just die, you know. Like, if the heat just spikes up on us, we can just roast alive. Right? And what will all of this be for then? What will be the story of humanity then? Our grandeur and our greatness and our power and our strength and the meaning we were pursuing and the incentivization structures and the free market enterprise. Well, where will it all be then? I cling on to an old Bible story with this. I was raised a fundamentalist Christian. I'm not anymore. But I cling on to an old Bible story with this because I rather am fond of this story. And it's more or less how I think it's going to go for humanity. Moses leads the Israelites out of Egypt. They head towards Mount Sinai. Big, long, incredible journey. The parting of the Red Sea. All of that crazy shit. Moses climbs Mount Sinai to get the 10 Commandments. I'm sure we're all familiar with the story. While Moses is at the top of the mountain, getting the 10 Commandments from God, the Israelites down below melt down all their gold and create a golden calf and begin worshiping the golden calf. While literally God's at the top of the mountain talking to Moses. God sees this, being God, and says, and you can read the scripture, I'm going to massacre all of these Israelites. I'm going to wipe them off the face of the planet. I'm going to destroy them. And Moses says, you can't do that. What will the Egyptians say? What will the Egyptians say? if you wipe the Israelites out. They'll say that the God of the Israelites freed his slaves so he could kill them in the desert. And how great and powerful will you be then? And for probably the only time in the entire scriptures, a mortal changes the mind of God. And God agrees and says to Moses, very well, but you got to go down there and get this sorted out. And Moses does. That's my hope for humanity. That the wrath of God is upon us. The storms are coming. The fires are coming. The water is coming up. That is a certainty. But it won't wipe us out completely. Because what would be the fucking point of that? To come all this way and end it with a dead rock floating in space? Where's the fun in that? Where's the joy in that? Where's the story in that? You don't want to start again. Look how much effort and time it took to get here. You want this to continue on. And my hope is that the universe will agree. But boy, is it going to be a ride. Boy, is it going to be chaotic. Boy, is it going to be destructive. And I'll be here, talking us through it every step of the way until the day I can't. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.